Napoleon Bonaparte was incredibly short. The name Napoleon is synonymous with two things: conquering Europe and being incredibly short. Except he wasn't. Napoleon stood around 5 feet 7 inches, which was a perfectly average, even slightly tall height for a Frenchman in the early 1800s. The tiny tyrant image was a masterpiece of British wartime propaganda. English cartoonists relentlessly drew him as a pipsqueak to make their greatest enemy seem less threatening and more ridiculous. The myth was so effective that the term Napoleon complex still exists today, all thanks to a 200-year-old political smear campaign that completely distorted the man's actual stature. The Great Wall of China is visible from space. This is a modern myth that many of us heard growing up as a testament to human achievement, that the Great Wall is the only man-made object visible from space, or even the moon. It's completely untrue. Numerous astronauts, including Neil Armstrong, have confirmed that you cannot see the Great Wall with the naked eye from low Earth orbit, let alone the moon. While it's incredibly long, it's also relatively narrow and made from materials that blend in with the surrounding landscape. The claim seems to have originated as a hypothetical idea long before the space age and was repeated so often that it became accepted as fact. In reality, what you can see from orbit are things like city lights at night and large airports. The Salem witches were burned at the stake. The image of women being burned at the stake is burned into our minds when we think of the Salem Witch Trials. But in colonial America, that didn't happen. The 19 people convicted and executed during the infamous 1692 trials were all hanged on Gallows Hill. Burning at the stake was a method of execution for heresy used widely in Europe during their witch hunts, but the American colonists followed English law, which prescribed hanging as the punishment for witchcraft. The gruesome imagery of burning has become so intertwined with the story that it has completely overshadowed the historical reality of what took place in Salem. Columbus discovered America and proved the Earth was round. Let's tackle two myths in one. First, Christopher Columbus did not set out to prove the Earth was round. Every educated person in Europe already knew it was round. That fact had been established since the ancient Greeks over 1,500 years earlier. By the Middle Ages, this knowledge was widespread among scholars, sailors, and the church itself. The flat Earth idea was mostly a 19th century invention, pushed by writers who wanted to portray the medieval era as ignorant and unscientific. Columbus's goal was to find a faster western sea route to Asia. His great miscalculation wasn't the Earth's shape, but its size. He thought it was much smaller. This also leads to the second myth. He didn't discover America. Millions of indigenous people were already living there in complex societies. He simply initiated the lasting European contact with the Americas, an event with devastating consequences for its native inhabitants. Albert Einstein failed math as a child. This is a popular feel-good story meant to inspire struggling students, but it's completely false. Albert Einstein was a mathematical prodigy. He mastered differential and integral calculus by the age of 15. The myth likely started because of a misunderstanding of the Swiss grading system at his school, where a 6 was the highest grade and a 1 was the lowest. A biographer later saw his transcript and, mistaking the system for the German one, where 1 is the best, assumed he had failed. In reality, Einstein was consistently getting the highest marks in mathematics and physics. He never failed math. He was simply too brilliant for the myth to be true. Gladiators always fought to the death. Thanks to movies like Gladiator, we imagine Roman arenas as non-stop bloodbaths where every fight ended in death. This was rarely the case. Gladiators were highly trained, expensive assets owned by a manager, much like professional athletes today. It was simply bad business to have your star fighters killed off every week. Most fights were governed by strict rules and referees, ending when one gladiator was wounded, disarmed, or simply surrendered. The famous thumbs down signal from the emperor likely meant swords down, a gesture to spare the loser's life. Fights to the death were rare spectacles, reserved for special occasions or condemned criminals. Ninjas dressed in all black. The image of a ninja silently creeping in the shadows, clad in an all-black pajama-like outfit, is a complete pop culture invention. In reality, ninjas were spies, saboteurs, and assassins who relied on stealth and disguise to get close to their targets. Their primary skill was blending in, not standing out. They would dress as farmers, monks, merchants, or any other commoner to move unnoticed. For nighttime missions, they would wear dark, navy blue clothing, as true black stands out against the lighter night sky. The iconic all-black uniform was created for Japanese kabuki theater, where stagehands dressed in black to appear invisible to the audience. Paul Revere shouted, "The British are coming." Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's famous poem immortalized Paul Revere's midnight ride, but it got one major detail wrong. Revere never galloped through the Massachusetts countryside shouting, "The British are coming!" His mission was a covert intelligence operation, and shouting would have been the fastest way to get arrested. Furthermore, most colonists in 1775 still considered themselves British subjects. The phrase would have been confusing and meaningless. Instead, Revere quietly rode from house to house, warning key revolutionary leaders that the regulars are coming out, a coded message referring to the regular British Army troops leaving Boston. The famous line was a poetic invention from nearly a century later. Walt Disney drew Mickey Mouse. While Walt Disney was undoubtedly the visionary genius and the original voice behind Mickey Mouse, he did not draw the character's most famous early designs. The iconic round-eared mouse was primarily the creation of Disney's lead animator and friend, Iwerks. Iwerks was a brilliant and incredibly fast artist who animated the first Mickey cartoons, like Steamboat Willie, almost single-handedly. He was responsible for the character's look and fluid movements that made him a star. Disney provided the personality, the voice, and the groundbreaking vision for what Mickey could become, but it was Iwerks' pen that first brought the beloved mouse to life on paper. The Iron Maiden was a medieval torture device. The Iron Maiden, a terrifying iron cabinet with spikes lining the inside, is a staple of horror movies and museum dungeons, presented as a pinnacle of medieval cruelty. There's just one problem. It's a historical fake. There is no evidence that such a device ever existed or was used for torture during the Middle Ages. The first Iron Maiden was actually constructed in the late 18th century as a sensationalist museum piece, pieced together from various artifacts to shock and entertain tourists. While medieval torture was certainly brutal, the iconic Iron Maiden is a creepy work of historical fiction, a ghoulish invention from a more modern era. Slaves built the Egyptian pyramids. This is one of the most enduring images in all of ancient history, thanks largely to Hollywood epics, hundreds of thousands of slaves being brutally forced to build the pyramids under the crack of a whip. It's a powerful image, but it's wrong. Archaeological evidence, including the discovery of entire villages and cemeteries for the workers near the pyramids, tells a very different story. The pyramids were built by skilled, paid, or conscripted Egyptian laborers. They were organized, well-fed with daily rations of bread and beer, and were even buried with honor near the sacred tombs they built. The myth of slave labor was popularized by the ancient Greek historian Herodotus centuries after the pyramids were built and has stuck ever since. Vikings wore horned helmets. Picture a Viking. You're probably thinking of a huge bearded warrior with a horned helmet, right? You can keep the beard, but you've got to lose the horns. There is zero archaeological or historical evidence that Vikings ever wore horned helmets into battle. It would be a terrible idea, the perfect thing for an enemy to grab and twist your neck, or for your own axe to get caught on. That iconic look was actually invented in the 1870s by a costume designer for a German opera based on Norse mythology. So, every time you see a Viking with horns, you're not looking at a fearsome warrior, you're looking at a 19th century opera costume. People in the Middle Ages never bathed. We have this stereotype of the Dark Ages being a time of unrelenting filth, where people lived in mud and never washed. In reality, for most of the Middle Ages, bathing was a common and important social ritual. Most towns and even villages had public bathhouses, which served as social hubs much like a modern-day coffee shop or pub. People went there to get clean, eat, drink, and socialize. Personal hygiene was valued. The widespread decline of public bathing actually came much later, around the 16th century, due to a combination of factors, including fears that diseases like syphilis were spreading in the bathhouses, and the Reformation's stricter views on public nudity. Humans only use 10% of their brains. It's one of the most popular facts repeated in movies, self-help books, and classrooms, but it's completely false. Brain scans prove that nearly every part of the human brain is active, even when we're resting or daydreaming. The myth likely started in the early 20th century, when psychologists noted that only a small percentage of the brain's potential was understood at the time. Hollywood and pop culture twisted that into the idea we only use 10%. In reality, if 90% of your brain wasn't working, you'd be in a coma, not solving math problems. Chameleons change color to camouflage. Everyone knows that chameleons blend into their surroundings to hide, but that's not why they change color. Chameleons shift shades mainly to regulate body temperature and, more importantly, to communicate with other chameleons. Bright colors signal aggression or attraction, while darker tones often mean submission. Their camouflage is secondary and limited. Most chameleons can't just turn into any background. The myth became popular because it was a neat explanation for a strange ability, but it's science fiction more than science fact.